Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of what matters.
That's right, giving you those key insights, clear and hopefully engaging.
And today, we're doing something a bit different. We're diving deep into a really powerful historical account from the Bible.
Yeah, 2 Kings chapter 19, it's quite a story, a real pressure cooker situation.
Definitely. Imagine this. King Hezekiah of Judah is up against it. The Assyrian Empire, led by King Sennacherib, is breathing down his neck.
And these Assyrians, they weren't just any army. They were the superpower,
Yeah.
feared everywhere, ruthless.
So the stakes couldn't be higher, really. It must have felt like the end.
Absolutely terrifying. But, woven into this whole crisis are these really potent themes that still speak volumes today.
Like, what are we going to unpack here?
Well, we're looking at the sheer power of prayer, what it means to really trust in God's sovereignty when everything seems lost.
And divine intervention, right? That idea that sometimes help comes from completely outside our own abilities.
Exactly. So the goal is to explore this ancient story and see what timeless wisdom we can pull out for life now.
Okay, let's jump in. The crisis really kicks off when Hezekiah gets these, frankly, terrifying threats from Sennacherib. How does he react initially?
Well, his reaction is immediate and quite visceral. The text says he tears his clothes, puts on sackcloth.
The traditional signs of deep distress.
Precisely, mourning, repentance, maybe desperation, and then he goes straight to the house of the Lord, to the temple. It shows how seriously he took this threat.
He didn't just wallow, though. He acts. He sends people to the prophet Isaiah.
Yeah, he sends his top officials, Eliakim, Shebna, the senior priest, with a message for Isaiah. And it's bleak.
What did they say?
They basically said, look, this is a day of trouble, of rebuke, and even blasphemy. They used this really vivid image, like a woman in labor who has no strength to actually give birth. Utter powerlessness.
Heavy stuff.
But there's also this glimmer of hope. Hezekiah asks Isaiah to pray for the remnant, the people left in Judah, and he hopes God heard the insults from Sennacherib's messenger, Rabshakeh.
Hoping God would defend his own name.
Exactly, that God would rebuke the one mocking the living God. So even in despair, there's this kernel of faith.
And Isaiah, what's his first response? Does he offer any comfort?
He does. Isaiah sends back a message straight away. Be not afraid. Powerful words in that context.
Just what Hezekiah needed to hear, I imagine.
For sure. And then Isaiah gives a prophecy. He says God will put a blast or a spirit, maybe an impulse, in Sennacherib. He'll hear a rumor, turn back.
And meet his end back home.
Yep, fall by the sword in his own land. So right away, there's this divine reassurance, God saying, I've got this, even if it looks impossible.
But the pressure doesn't just evaporate, does it? The Assyrians keep pushing.
No, not at all. Rabshakeh actually heads back to Sennacherib, who's now fighting another city, Libnah. He's heard the Egyptians or Cushites under Tirhakah are coming.
So Sennacherib's got other problems, but he still focuses on Judah.
He does. He doubles down, sends more letters, more threats directly to Hezekiah. He's not letting up on the intimidation.
And these letters, they sound like classic psychological warfare. What's he trying to do?
Oh, absolutely. He's trying to completely demoralize Hezekiah and the people. He basically says, don't let your God fool you into thinking Jerusalem will be saved.
He uses past victories as proof.
Yes, he lists all these other nations Assyria has crushed, Gazan, Haran, Rezeph. He names their kings, Hamath, Arpad, and crucially, he points out, their gods didn't save them.
The implication being?
What makes you think your God is any different? Look at the track record. It's brutal. He's attacking the very foundation of their hope, their trust in God.
So, faced with this direct assault on his faith, what does Hezekiah do this time?
His response is, I think, incredibly powerful. He takes that letter, the physical embodiment of the threat, goes back to the temple, and the text says he spread it before the Lord.
Utterly laid it out in front of God.
Yeah, imagine that. It's such a visual act of saying, God, look at this. This is what we're facing. It's in your hands now. Total reliance.
And then he prays. What's the essence of that prayer?
It's an amazing prayer. He starts by acknowledging who God is, the only God, creator of everything, sovereign over all kingdoms, establishing God's supreme authority.
Okay.
Then he pleads, Lord, open your eyes, see, listen to Sennacherib's words, mocking you, the living God. He frames it as an offense against God himself.
Does he acknowledge Assyria's power?
Yes, he says, it's true, Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste to nations. But then he makes a key distinction and thrown their gods into the fire. But those weren't gods, just wood and stone made by humans. So destroying idols proves nothing about the true God.
Ah, Clever distinction.
And the core of his plea isn't just save us, it's save us so that all kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, O Lord, are God.
So it's about God's glory, ultimately.
Exactly. His motivation goes beyond just survival.
And God answers this prayer. Isaiah comes back again.
Yes, Isaiah delivers a second, much longer, and incredibly detailed prophecy. God basically says, I have heard your prayer about Sennacherib.
Okay, what follows?
God addresses Sennacherib directly, almost tauntingly. The virgin daughter of Zion despises you, scorns you. Jerusalem, though seemingly weak, spiritually defies him.
God kind of throws Sennacherib's arrogance back in his face.
Totally. God recounts Sennacherib's boasts. I've conquered mountains, cut down the best trees, I've diverted rivers with my feet, all symbols of his supposed absolute power.
Right.
But then comes the bombshell. God says, haven't you heard? I determined this long ago. I planned it. You were just the instrument I used to turn fortified cities into rubble.
Wow. That puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Sennacherib thought he was the master, but he was actually a tool.
Precisely. A powerful reminder of God's sovereignty over history, over empires, over everything.
And what about the consequences? For the people Sennacherib conquered, and for him?
The people, God describes them as powerless, dismayed, like grass that withers quickly. But for Sennacherib, because of his rage and arrogance against God,
Yes.
God says, I will put my hook in your nose and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back the way you came.
Like leading away a captured animal?
Yeah.
That's a humiliating image for a powerful king.
Incredibly so. Complete control asserted by God.
And God gives Hezekiah a sign too, doesn't he? Something about food.
Yes, a tangible sign for the near future. This year, you'll eat what grows by itself, next year the same, acknowledging the disruption of the siege. But in the third year, you will sow and reap, plant vineyards, and eat their fruit. A clear promise of peace, restoration, return to normal life.
And hope for the future of Judah.
Definitely. God promises a remnant will survive, take root, and bear fruit. Growth and life will return, driven by, as Isaiah says, the zeal of the Lord of hosts.
And a specific promise about Jerusalem itself.
Unequivocal. He, Sennacherib, shall not come into this city or shoot an arrow here, or cast up a siege mound against it. I will defend this city to save it for my own sake and for my servant David's sake.
Wow. And then the climax, the intervention itself.
It's sudden and dramatic. The text says that night, the very night after the prophecy, perhaps the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians.
185,000.
That's the number given. When the people got up in the morning, the Assyrian camp was filled with dead bodies, a catastrophic, inexplicable loss for Sennacherib.
Great gone. Delivered.
Miraculously delivered, an act completely beyond human capability.
And what becomes of Sennacherib? He survives this.
He does survive the night, yes. But utterly defeated, he retreats back to Nineveh, his capital. The threat is over for Judah.
And his end fulfills the earlier prophecy.
It does. Sometime later, the account says, while he was worshiping his god Nisroch, 2 of his own sons assassinated him. He fell by the sword in his own land, just as Isaiah had predicted.
So the whole narrative comes full circle. It's an incredible story.
It really is.
Thinking about this whole account now, it's obviously more than just history. What are the key things here that can, strengthen our faith today?
Well, first off, Hezekiah's immediate turn to prayer. That's huge, isn't it? In the face of this overwhelming, impossible situation, his first instinct was God.
Not military strategy, not diplomacy first, but prayer.
Right. It's a powerful model. Bring the fear, bring the problem, lay it out before God. That act of turning to God in crisis.
And the trust element, believing God can act even when everything looks bleak.
Absolutely. Hezekiah's trust in God's sovereignty, despite Sennacherib's taunts and Assyria's might. That's a massive lesson in faith over fear, believing in a power greater than the problem.
That image of him spreading the letter out, it feels very practical.
Yeah.
Like we can actually do that with our problems metaphorically or even literally.
Exactly. It's about deliberately placing our burdens, our anxieties into God's presence, acknowledging he sees them and can handle them. It makes prayer very tangible.
And the fact that God did hear and did act, even miraculously.
Yeah, that reinforces the idea that God isn't distant. He's involved, he listens, he acts on behalf of those who trust him. Maybe not always with angels overnight.
Right, not always that dramatic.
But he works in ways we might not expect or understand, bringing deliverance and hope even when we feel completely cornered. It really affirms that relationship.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaways seem to be the incredible power of prayer, the absolute necessity of trusting God's control.
And the reality that divine intervention, God stepping in, is possible. These aren't just old stories, they're living truths.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Reflect on your own challenges right now.
Yeah. How might embracing Hezekiah's approach, that immediate turn to God in prayer, that determined trust even when things look bad, how might that change how you face those difficulties?
How could it deepen your own faith walk? Something to definitely reflect on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.